Go.
Good morning, everybody. It is April 29th, 2022. It is an important day in the history of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. I am Lisa Salberg, founder and CEO of the HCMA, here with a live broadcast on Facebook that will become a Tales from the Heart podcast, which you can pick up anywhere you pick up your podcasts. I am joined today by Dr. Milind Desai of the Cleveland Clinic and a principal investigator in the Valor study from BMS. And I'm going to ask Dr. Desai to, in this case, be a little bit formal today and provide us with some disclosures before we get started into a conversation about a new drug approved by the FDA yesterday.
Thank you, Lisa, and good morning, everybody. And thanks to everybody for joining. I'm Milind Desai. I'm from the Cleveland Clinic. I direct the HCM program there. Specifically, as Lisa mentioned, I am the principal investigator of the Valor HCM trial, which evaluated Mavacamten, or now Camzyos, in the context of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. My disclosures are as follows. I am a consultant for Bristol Myers Squibb, and I'm a consultant for Medtronic. Let's get started.
Let's get started. All right, I'm just going to make sure that we are streaming okay on Facebook before I dive in too deep here. And I'm multitasking from a single laptop and a phone, so I apologize in advance for not watching you and multitasking here, everybody. But I've got to make sure we are functioning properly before we get on to some very important information. Okay. All right, we are here, and I am going to put that on mute, and I am going to have comments here. Okay, so as we go forward with this presentation, I'm going to ask you to hold questions until the end, and at the end, we will take some questions from the audience, and we will answer them as best we can. I'm not going to go over a really long history here, but back in 2014, a new company was started with a hope to bring a new medication to the HCM arena, and a first-in-kind drug was started to be developed. That company was MyoKardia. It sold to Bristol Myers Squibb about a year and a half ago, and Bristol Myers Squibb has taken this to the finish line. And yesterday, the FDA approved what we had previously been calling Mavacamten, and the trade name will now be Camzyos. Did I say that right? Camzyos? Got to get used to that one. So it's an exciting time for everybody in the HCM community. There's a little excitement, little bit of nerves going on around the community today as we all get ready for what this is going to mean for us. So let's start with something called the label. Milind, could you please explain what the label indication for the use of Camzyos is within the HCM community?
Yes. Good morning again. Thank you. So Camzyos, yes, I also have to get used to saying that. It rolls off nicely, but I still have to get used to that. But at this point of time, the label states that if you have obstructive hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, so evidence of gradients and outflow tract obstruction, and you are symptomatic, not for asymptomatic individuals, so New York Heart Association class 2 and 3, not advanced heart failure where you are in the hospital and have symptoms at rest. So we call it New York Heart Association class 2 and 3 in the setting of obstructive HCM. These are the patients who would qualify for Camzyos.
So let's take this step by step for those who aren't used to some terminology. Can you tell us what the New York Heart Association class scale is?
Yes. So New York Heart Association 1, so this has been in place for decades as a way to assess people's functional capacity. And this is typically assessed by a healthcare provider. So NYHA class, it's commonly called NYHA, New York Heart Association. NYHA class 1 is when you are asymptomatic. You have no restrictions to anything you do in your life. NYHA class 4 is where you are somebody presenting with advanced symptoms. So you have symptoms at rest, or you are hospitalized with advanced heart failure. In between is the sweet spot for this drug. NYHA class 2 is you have mild symptoms. You are able to do a lot of things, but when you try to get to through your day, for instance, you will have symptoms and functional limitation. And at NYHA class 3 is you have, so obviously it is in a spectrum, it is more symptoms than where you have NYHA class 2, where it is also limiting your ability to do your activities of daily living. So I like to simplify things for my patients, and that's how I look at it. You are not asymptomatic, you're not sick enough to be in the hospital, you are somewhere in the middle.
So HCM with obstruction is interfering with your normal life functions and your ability to live the life that you want to live. Climbing stairs, hills, activities are tiring, you get short of breath, you get dizzy, you get chest discomfort. These are the patients that we're looking at. So let's also be clear as to what we're not looking at on the label right now. Non-obstructed patients, advanced heart failure patients, if you're heading towards transplant. This is not the class that has been approved with this label. And I pause and I say that because I'm getting a lot of questions about, well, when can I have it? I have apical HCM. Like, nope, not now. There is a trial scheduled for later this year for the non-obstructed group. And then there's some other things beyond that. So let's just say if you're non-obstructed, hang on, there'll be clinical trial opportunities for you. For now, we are talking about symptomatic, obstructive, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, outflow tract gradients, 30 or greater, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, and New York Heart Association class 2 or 3. So that's the group of people we're talking about. If you're in that group and your ears are perking up, here's some more information that you're going to need to know. The dosing is going to start at 5 milligrams. And that is starting point. But this is a very unusual drug because it is going to be dosed based on echocardiography data. And when you look at the label, there is a black box warning. This is really important. Milind, can you tell them what a black box warning is?
Yes. So especially anytime when a new drug is launched, there has to be the right amount of caution that all of us should emphasize and have an understanding of. So FDA, in their appropriate judgment, assigns certain things which they want us to pay extra attention to as black box warning. So to sidetrack a little bit, if you think about aspirin has a black box warning in the context of if you have a GI ulcer, you should not be taking aspirin. So it's a black box warning. So in the context of Camzyos, wow, got it. In the context of Camzyos, we have to get to its basic mechanism. The basic mechanism, it reduces hypercontractility. So in hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, your heart squeezes very robustly. So it is designed to reduce that robust degree of squeezing. And sometimes there is a concern raised by the FDA that if this robust a reduction in this robust squeezing goes overboard and it reduces your heart function by a substantial amount, you can develop heart failure of the other kind. So where your heart becomes weak. So the best way to monitor this is by echocardiography, and we will talk about that in a few minutes. So the black box warning suggests that if you get put on Camzyos, then we need to, first of all, have a very good understanding of where your ejection fraction is. Ejection fraction, most of you with HCM should know what an ejection fraction is. Ejection fraction is a number which determines the pumping function of your heart. So normal is about 55% and higher, 60%. In HCM patients, it's mostly 60% and higher. So the FDA is strongly recommending in the form of a black box warning that A, you should know what the ejection fraction is. You should not give this drug to somebody with a reduced ejection fraction. And importantly, you should monitor these patients to make sure the ejection fraction stays within normal range. And if it does not, by way of echocardiography, then it is time to interrupt the medication, or it's time for action. That's what it means.
Okay, so the black box warning on Camzyos, Mava, is that you need to monitor with echocardiography the ejection fraction as you titrate the dose up or down. So you start at 5, and at week 4, week 8, and week 12, there must be an echocardiogram. Now, this isn't like maybe at week 5 and maybe at week 10 and maybe at week 14. This is week 4, 8, and 12. And this is going to be a little bit of a logistical balancing beam for individuals, clinicians, and patients to manage that echo. And it may become a little bit troublesome for some people to schedule this out, but it's critically important. If you're going to make the commitment to try this agent, you're going to have to follow the rules. They're there to protect you. You will not get a refill on your prescription without the echo being done. So you can't just say, oh, well, just give me my refill, I'll do it later. No. Getting this drug is going to be very different than what most people with HCM have ever experienced with a pharmacy before. This is going to be dispensed only by a specialty pharmacy. There are double checks in order to make sure that the echo has been done, the doctor has signed off, the patient knows. There's going to be extra steps here. It's going to be a little bit of a pain for a while to get this, because that's the safe way to deploy this. So you're going to get these echoes, and I'm going to take an off-script moment in a sense. The label says it should be dosed. Well, I just came off the BMS investor call where I got a little bit more information than was in the press release as well. So they're recommending that centers of excellence be the mechanism for disbursement of Mavacamten. The HCMA is the only organization that recognizes centers of excellence for HCM. So you're really good to go to our list and try to have one of those doctors prescribe for you. There is a co-management strategy that the HCM center, like Dr. Desai, could prescribe Mavacamten and do your original echo. And they're suggesting that maybe a hometown cardiologist can do the follow-up echoes, because they're really looking at ejection fraction rather than outflow tract obstruction. While that can be done, I would argue that it's probably safer to let the HCM program that you're aligned with manage this while you're titrating up for those first 12 weeks. And then you'll be getting echoes every 3 months thereafter. And just out of safety at the onset of this, I would highly encourage people to try to get back to their center of excellence for those first 3 echoes to make sure that your ejection fraction is what we think it is. Milind, any comments on that?
So you raise a few important points. The first and foremost is there's a reason for designation of experience center of excellence, is because it's not that there are better machines. It is just the team approach, which looks at things in a specific way, where you are where there is checks and balances and reducing the room for error. Number one. Number two, the other important thing, what Lisa mentioned for the monthly echo visit, is at this point of time for you, the patient's safety. This is a first-in-class medication, first drug ever developed in the context of HCM specifically. So look, I am a simple-minded human being. I remember when my first kid was born, how much on eggshells we were taking care of our first kid. And once you have your 5th or 6th child, you are a pro basically at changing the diapers, etc. So coming back to the real medication, it is for your safety to monitor the ejection fraction so that we don't, in trying to do something good, we don't inadvertently try to end up doing something that is not good. We don't want to create another problem by trying to solve the first problem. That is the important thing. And then this is you, the patient today, and as they say in business parlance, customer is always right. You, the patient, is the customer. So at this point of time, it is incumbent and important that you know that the echo that is going to be done for you is done right. It is done by the appropriate people, and it is doing something. Measurement of ejection fraction is a very basic thing. It should be possible by any echocardiographer, but we know that not all, there are heterogeneities in how the reports are generated, et cetera. So that's why we want to make sure that it is done right. It is done, it could be done in a co-management strategy. Absolutely, it could be done, but make sure at least for the first few months, your HCM cardiologist is in the loop with the echocardiogram. I mean, ideally do it at the center where you got the drug prescribed. If that is not entirely logistically possible, what I'm going to tell my patients is as follows. I definitely want to look at that echo. Okay, and look, this is 2022. We just came through, or we are still in the midst of a lingering pandemic. We've figured out ways how to deliver care effectively through tele and this and that. So, these things, but the important thing, the first and the most important thing I'm going to tell you is it is for your, it is out of an abundance of caution that we do the right thing. And this is, we got to make sure, and the rules that are put in place at the pharmacy about documenting an echo before proceeding, they are for your safety, basically. It doesn't mean that we are giving you a medication that's going to make you sick or whatever. I mean, the proportion of patients who drop their ejection fraction is very small, okay? But you do not want to be the one that, it's like flying an airplane or flying in an airplane today is extremely safe, but that doesn't mean that the pilot stops checking before he takes off the plane. That is the analogy here.
Okay, so we've gone over who it's for: obstructive symptomatic HCM, New York Heart Association class 2 and 3. We've gone over the dosing in the first 3 months. I'm going to get into payment and programs for that in just a moment. Let's just talk a little bit more about the clinical deployment of the agent. After you have your first 3 months, not 3 months, 4, 8, and 12-week echoes, then they go to every 12 weeks. And you're still going to follow up with that. There are some drug-to-drug interactions here, and I was hoping Dr. Desai could talk about what drugs might impact the way Mavacamten, Camzyos, actually absorbs into the body and what could interfere in that, because they are some serious potential clinical complications from some drug interactions, which can be easily avoided. And I think off the bat, we're going to do well at remembering this. But later on, as we get a little bit more comfortable, people may forget these parts because they're common over-the-counter drugs that might interact. Can you explain that, please?
So again, some of these words are heavy words, and I will simplify those. So CYP2C19 inhibitors. Exactly. So the simple thing is, I will simplify it. Again, simplification is my middle name. First of all, talk to your doctors, the folks who are prescribing. A common drug, a common type of drugs is the drugs that we use for acid reflux. So there are some drugs with acid reflux that will interact with this medication. So you just have to switch to another type that are commonly available. So I'm not gonna list the entire list of drugs right now. We will be and I don't want to create more confusion or angst than necessary, but suffice to say, like there are certain type of CYP19 inhibitors. That's the doctor way of saying it, that we have to be careful about. And if you are on one of those, then you have to get off of that before we initiate this. But this is something that your pharmacist is going to be hyper vigilant, your doctor is going to be hyper vigilant, and you, again, you are the customer. The customer is always right, but the customer also has to be careful, and you have to ask the right questions.
So basically, acid reflux medications need to be confirmed with your healthcare provider team to ensure that they're not bothering the absorption or processing of Camzyos. That's the short version of that. So we know that we were expecting FDA approval back in January, and they paused it because they wanted to create something called REMS. Can you talk a little bit about what a REM is and how that's actually going to be played out now that it's available? What do we have to do?
Yeah, so I will start by saying, I will tell you what I know. Considering the fact that the drug was approved less than 12 hours ago, I will do my best. But REMS stands for Risk Evaluation and Mitigation Strategy. It is careful monitor. In simple English, what it means is careful monitoring for the right dose. We don't want to overdo. So again, as I alluded to earlier, we want to create a safe milieu where we are relieving symptomatic obstructive hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. In our overzealousness, if we get overzealous, we don't want to go the other way where we are taking a hypercontractile or a heart that is beating very vigorously to a heart that is beating weakly. So the FDA has put this risk evaluation and mitigation strategy, or REM strategy, where me, the provider, has to log on to a website and certify myself, meaning I have looked at the rules of the game and I sign off on the rules of the game. Number one. Number two, you, the patient, has to also do the same, because look, this is a team sport, and this is a team sport that involves your heart. Okay, so it is my responsibility to make sure I'm doing the right thing. It is your responsibility also that you understand the rules of the game. So that will involve you logging on and understanding, and of course the pharmacist. Again, Lisa alluded to, somebody has to do the checks and balances, before I prescribe you the next month's medication. Have you done what you were supposed to do? So these 3 steps have been put in place, at least at the present time, to make sure it is rolled out appropriately. Now, look, nobody can predict the future, okay? A year, 2, 3 from now, we hopefully have substantial experience with this class of medications, this drug specifically, and say, we
don't need to do that anymore.
Do that, and they may get rolled back, some of these regulations, and we will evolve there. But this is to make sure, another point is, this is to make sure right now the labeling does not involve non-obstructive apical HCM. So we want to make sure that there is no willy-nilly, for the lack of a better medical term, there is no willy-nilly overutilization of this drug in the wrong patients. Because we don't want to, once it's out in the market, then you don't want things to go awry.
I'm going to pause there for a second and talk about a concept that we've been talking about a lot, and it's shared decision making. And I'm going to take that to the next level and say shared responsibility. We are all in this together, and this is actually a historic moment, and oddly, HCM is at the center of it, which is completely wonderfully bizarre to me at this point. The FDA approved a class of drug that never existed before. They put controls on it that they've never done before that I'm aware of. I can't find any example of the FDA approving a drug based on echocardiography dosing. Like that just, people, this didn't happen. And that means that a lot of people had to take a step away from the normal and say, the normal doesn't work for HCM. But if you're in the HCM community, you've known that for a long time. We kind of have to make our own rule book because our hearts function a little bit differently than others. So there's some risk here that we have to take as patients, and we have to work with our physicians, and we have to work with industry and the FDA. So we're all in this game together, and we all need to deploy this carefully to the right patient population, slowly, effectively, monitoring the whole time so that we make sure that we don't do bad things that were not intended. So it's going to be slow. I know there's a lot of excitement, and we've been looking at this excitement for years building up, and patients who have been in the clinical trials pause. Thank you all so much for being in a clinical trial for a brand new first-in-class drug that took bravery, that took time and commitment. So thank you all. Thank you. So to those brave souls who went first, we've asked them within the community not to speak about their experience for fear of biases, conscious and subconscious biases of the rest of the community. So in our social media feeds, we have kept you quiet. You may speak now. It is an approved drug, and you can share your experience, and they're already doing so. I've been hearing the experiences for quite some time. So there's some excitement here because a good percentage of patients who've tried are doing well, but it's not for everybody. It didn't work for everybody. So we need to have caution in dosing, caution in prescribing, and we have to manage expectations. It's not going to be it for everybody. We've been through dual chamber pacing. It wasn't it for everybody. We went through alcohol septoablation. It isn't it for everybody. Myectomy isn't it for everybody. But Mavacamten, Camzyos may be a great opportunity for some, but it does come with responsibility. Comments on that, Milind, before I get on to payments?
So I cannot agree more about two words that you said: shared responsibility. This is shared responsibility. We are in this together. Look, at the end of the day, this disease was discovered about 60 years ago. And we are here. We are here, a targeted therapy. So it is, let's take it for what it is, that we have come a long, 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 long way. But, we have, trepidation is not the right word. It is, we have to be appropriately cautious. We have to appropriately question everything we do. We, not me, not you, we do. And again, I go back to raising your first child syndrome. All of us can relate to the fact that, at least those of us who have more than one child, you were hyper careful with your first child because that was a new experience for you. So it is, but we are truly, this is step one. And like Lisa says, we are expanding the size of the tent. Okay, we are making the tent of offerings bigger. And once you get into the tent, the buffet table just got significantly larger, and it will continue to grow. That's the way I think about it.
Okay. So I call it tools in our toolbox. We have another tool in the toolbox that we can deploy, and we have more opportunities, which means more hope, and which means more chances for patients to feel better. So this is all good stuff with this big caution umbrella that I'm throwing on top of everything, saying, ladies and gentlemen, I know there's excitement. Please go slowly. Follow the rule book. The rule book was set by a lot of very thoughtful, cautious people, including federal regulators. And, FDA takes a lot of guff. They really do. But in this case, I think they may have hit the mark right. And I am really happy that they weren't too afraid to take this action. But if you don't follow the rules and something bad happens, it looks bad for the whole drug and the whole concept. So you gotta follow the rules, people. You gotta follow the rules.
And Lisa, I will say you are 100, I mean, you are right. I meant to say that earlier is, look, new things, new therapies require a new way of thinking. You cannot solve new problems with the old way of thinking. That's, I think Albert Einstein said something along those lines. So, this is it's not a new disease, but it's a new way of managing disease. We do it like this, and in order for us to do it right to our patients, ultimately it is patients first. That's all that matters. If we have to create a new set of rule book, so be it. And I applaud the folks who have helped create this new rule book and the FDA for doing what they have done. You are absolutely right.
Okay, I know the big question is, but can I afford it? And I'm going to start backwards. I'm going to start with the programming that has been set up. And I can tell you, I have tested my patient advocacy skills to the highest degree over the past year and a half working with BMS directly to ensure that when this launched, it launched with a robust patient assistance program. And the websites are rolling out over the next 3 or 4 days. So as they become available, you will get access to them from the HCMA site. We'll push you right on over there, and BMS will be pushing patients right on back to us. So we're working collaboratively here. So there are a couple of different groupings of individuals and how you get access to healthcare. Number one, this is an American approval only. So if you're outside of the US, you're going to have to wait a while for approval in your country. So we are specifically speaking to the American population right now. If you have private insurance, any of the big insurance companies, Blue Cross, Cigna, Kaiser, any of the private pay healthcare systems, there is a copay assistance program available. There will be a patient assistance line. They will sign you up. You have to sign up through them to get these patient assisted discounts. We'll talk about that in just a second. There's also a nurse navigator program. They will remind you when your echoes are coming up, and they will help make sure that you understand how to fill the prescription and make sure all your paperwork is in order and help you through that process. There's a whole team of people waiting there to help you. So don't feel like, you're lost in the abyss. We're going to guide you to them. They're going to guide you through the process, and then you're going to come back on into the community, and you're going to be okay. The copay assist card for private insurance will be $10 a month for your prescription. The first 35 days are for free so that they can get your insurance approvals through while you're dosing up in your first month. So everybody can get access for the first month for free while they're getting your insurance approvals in place. And all of this information, you don't have to take notes. It's all going to be up on a website. So I'm just trying to let you understand the scope of what's going on. If you are, I believe it's VA and DOD, the copays will probably be less than $10 a month, possibly free, for those 2 access points. If you are Medicaid, there will be payment assistance programs available. They take about 30 days extra per state to kind of roll out. It takes them a little bit while to get that done. So maybe, June, July, August, you'll start to be able to get coverage for the Medicaid population. That's going to roll out slowly. Again, it's going to happen, and the copay assist card will probably be less than $10 a month. The tricky area is the Medicare patient. Medicare, by regulation and federal language, you don't qualify for a patient assistance program in the same way as private insurance does. It's about taxes and government, and we need to change this. Build Back Better bill had some language in there, but that died. So we're hoping that some other legislation will come across so we can do some Medicare reform, and that'll change things. But that's a different podcast. But for this case, there will be some assistance available for reimbursement and copay assist through foundation partnerships that are being established right now. All of these things take a little time to roll out. So not everybody's getting Mavacamten next week. It's going to take months to roll this out, people. You can't even get an appointment with your doctor next week if you wanted one, because it takes a while to get an appointment. So you can start plotting and planning like, okay, do I want to try this? What is my insurance access? What is it going to cost? How am I going to do that? You can do your due diligence now and set a plan. And maybe it's not right for you to do it now because you don't have the ability to have your echoes every 4 weeks for the next couple of months. But maybe in 3 months, you have that availability, or you can start planning that into your day now. And you can look at your budget and you can look at your insurance and see what your access points are and what this might actually cost you. But there are assistance programs. There are also going to be, and I think, again, the first time ever, an echo copay assist card.
Exactly.
So thank you for doing that, but it needed to be done. We have to guide this therapy with echocardiography. So there will be an echo payment assist card. Ta-da, may cost you $10 to get an echo. You know, that's the type of programming that is really going to make this accessible to people. Now I'm going to tell you something that may be a little shocking. Sorry, it's the price of the drug. I think the actual price is $89,500 a year. That's the labeled drug. But think of it like a label on a car when you go to buy one. It's really not the price. There's other things involved there. So what the price is, what your insurance company negotiates, and what you actually pay, you know, those are different things. Our system is kind of screwed up, people. It's just the way that it works. The important part is, will you have access? And I think the answer for the majority of individuals is cost will not be prohibitive. You will have access. You will have copay assistance on your prescription. You have copay assistance on your echoes. And that's what I can tell you. There's going, as the new information rolls out and as these websites become live and as these phone numbers become live for the patient assistance program and the nurse navigator program through Bristol Myers Squibb, we will be posting that on the HCMA page and we will point you right on over there. I have some specific questions coming in now, Dr. Desai. If somebody has a mid-cavity obstruction, are they qualified to try Mavacamten? Camzyos.
Well, at this point of time, what I'm going to tell is as follows. Hold off on that thought process, because this is, at this point of time, left ventricular outflow tract obstruction, dynamic LVOT obstruction. So we want to, again, there are downstream trials that are being planned for what is the atypical, so, not LV. So there are trials being planned for non-LV outflow tract obstruction patients. So so I would hold off on that thought process at this point of time.
If anybody has any additional questions, now would be the time to post them. So while they're posting questions, Milind, what are you thinking today?
I don't look. I am mostly a gregarious and person, or at least on the outset. Can I tell you one thing, Lisa? And I think I've periodically talked about it. I lost one of my best friends to hypertrophic cardiomyopathy at the age of 31. He left behind 2 kids under 5. Okay, he did not die because their family did not have money. He died because he got suboptimal, or there were opportunities for better advice that he could have gotten. He did not get good advice, okay? So there is a certain animal that comes out of me anytime I'm dealing with a complex or a symptomatic patient, to a point where I want to do it right for them. I've been blessed to be in a place like Cleveland Clinic, which has allowed me to be able to work as part of a team that gives me the ability to provide the full spectrum. But you know what? that team enabled us to take it to the next level and be part of a broader team where we are now talking, oh my God, we are talking potentially disease modifying therapy. Are you kidding me? In a 60-year span, we are talking disease modifying therapy. There are so many people who we have to thank, from the Seidmans who came up with the novel concept, Cricket and John Seidman, to the folks at Myocardia who took a chance on this drug, to BMS. And you know what? Developing the drug is one part of the story, but developing a process of delivering the drug or monitoring the safety, this echo business, I mean, what the heck? This is going to be a paradigm shift in how we take care of patients, not just HCM patients. Imaging driven monitoring. My career started as an imager, so this is like coming a full circle. Imaging driven endpoints for patients where we are monitoring for the safety of these patients. And the last thing, I'm going to say one thing, all of us, yes, our healthcare system has opportunities to improve and cost and percentage of GDP and all that. But, at this point of time, if I'm a patient, I'm not looking at 89,500. It's how much am I going to pay out of my pocket? So the fact that there are all these different mechanisms that have been put in place, the copay, the assistance program, the VA program, the Medicaid program, and this foundation, I mean, that's fairly ingenious if and forget the ingenuity, it is long overdue. This is how we should be doing good to our patients. We cannot have the haves and the have-nots. We need to have this for all. And paying for echoes. I mean, look, this makes me truly happy today. And I don't say that lightly. I truly mean it. I truly mean it. This is, let's forget the narratives, who gets to go for SRT, who gets to go for, no, let's forget the narrative. Today it is, we are doing right by our patients, and that's all that matters. That's it. That's, I'm very happy today for my patients. For you, I mean, you are a patient, you are an advocate. I'm very happy today.
There's a lot of people very happy today. There were a lot of great questions on the investor call with BMS from people that typically never said hypertrophic cardiomyopathy before, like from big investment houses in New York City, asking very specific, how are you going to dose and can you manage the echoes? I'm like, oh, look at you guys getting all HCM knowledgeable here. So to those investors who are listening, thanks. Those were good questions. I think there's a whole other audience here that I want to speak to for a second that I don't know will ever even listen to this. The investor community. I maybe underestimated some of that importance years ago, but when the concept of here's a molecule and we think it'll work. Okay, great, you got a molecule, think it'll work. First time I actually heard about this molecule was on a street in Boston. I was attending an advisory meeting on a genetics issue, and Cricket Seidman was there. And on the sidewalk, she goes, there's this thing gonna happen. I think it's gonna be good. I'm like, okay, Cricket, what's this about? And then I met the CEO of the company a couple months later, and the rest is history. So we wouldn't have gotten anywhere if venture capitalists didn't come to the table and put some money down. I'm not going to name names, but some pretty wealthy people have spent some money on some pretty silly things lately. And there is an opportunity to put money into good and invest in human existence and quality of life. So I encourage other investors to look at communities like this. We are happy to have you at the table and be partners. And there are a lot of other opportunities coming down the road where we can develop other types of therapies for HCM. And I'm kind of excited about the future because I think there's going to be other great things coming as well. So
can I make one comment, Lisa? It is also, look, the venture, the little business hat here. I mean, science has to always win over narratives. And this is great. This is evolution. But also another important thing that this small field and this molecule or this discussion is doing is it is looking at the processes, not just the molecule. Here's a pill, go to the pharmacy, figure out how you're going to take it. The pharmacist may give you instructions that you may or may not listen to fully. No, here we are going through, we have thought through the process. This is how the delivery is going to be. This is what we are going to do for your echoes or your monitoring that may add a burden of, you may perceive it as a burden of inconvenience, but we are going to make it better for you. We are make it less inconvenient for you. And if finances are an issue, then we are going to think. So, this is sort of soup to nuts conversation that we should be thinking about in all of medicine. It cannot just be a molecule. It has to be the process, because ultimately the patient benefits or suffers from a suboptimal process. We've seen this in the last few years. We have great, I'm not going to go political on it, but we have great treatments or things available. But if the process of getting, like the president says, vaccines don't mean vaccinations, for the lack of a better term, the jab has to go in, so that's in that thought out process. I think if it what my expectation and hope is it's going to work well, the process, of course, there'll be some growing pains, but once the growing pains are done, this is how we should be thinking about medicine as a whole.
I couldn't agree more. We have some more questions from the audience, so let's get back on topic. Does reducing the contractility affect the potential stiffening of the heart? Mechanistics. Let's talk mechanisms.
Yeah, so this drug, I'm going to use some heavy words. So this drug also has some lucitropic effects. We are not going to get into the details of that, but the expectation is that it will potentially also improve compliance of your heart. What is compliance? Is if your heart is stiff, that is also an underlying problem with HCM. So the expectation is that it will potentially make the heart less stiffer, number one. Number two, because it's a stiff heart, hypercontractile heart, and HCM heart uses energy inefficiently. And the expectation is that this drug would potentially also help use the energy use will become more efficient. Now, I will say this, the current data is in short and intermediate term. We need longer term data of safety as well as efficacy, as well as all these downstream effects. So, Rome was not built in a day, and neither is going to be our knowledge base on a new drug, novel therapy. So the downstream years will help us. And the planned trial in non-obstructive HCM will shed more light, because, not that it's ever good to have obstructive hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, but obstruction is a nice low-hanging fruit, if you ask me. If you fix it, it makes you feel better. God is great. That is great. But the planned trial, the non-obstructive, there the drug has to demonstrate it not only makes you feel better, exercise more, but what does it do to all these other parameters of stiffness and this and that. There's some preliminary data. There's preliminary analyses, papers published on echo, on MRI, which show trends in the right direction, in fact, positive signals. But long-term rubber needs to meet the long-term road for that.
So there's a bunch of questions about long-term mechanistic type issues. So I'm going to say this, and I'm not going to answer every question today because that's not really what today's about. It's about the launch. But here's what I'm promising you all. I'm working on putting together a webinar. I will be having 3 or 4 clinical experts come to talk to you about patient selection, monitoring, the past research, the upcoming research, And then I'm going to have representatives from the BMS Patient Support Services and Nurse Navigator Systems, either available live or pre-recorded, so that you understand who you're talking to when you're calling BMS, that it's not just this, voice on a phone somewhere, that these are real people who have been trained and who know what the needs are and that can walk you through the system. We've been working very hard to make sure that this is going to be as simple as possible for a complex system. There's a language you're all going to have to get used to if you want to try this drug, and it's called specialty pharmacy. And this means you are not going to be able to go to Walgreens and pick up a script of Camzyos. It's not going to be there. You're going to probably have a mail-in pharmacy. There's going to be a whole process involved. When I had my transplant, I learned about specialty pharmacies because that's where I get my transplant medication from. It's where they put dangerous, highly effective, but very controlled substances so that there's an extra level of evaluation before it's dispensed. And it's a pain in the neck, but it's the way that it works right now. Eventually, maybe it'll get better and easier, but it's an extra phone call. It's an extra few minutes on the phone. It's an extra process, but it's for safety. It's truly there to protect you. So in the coming weeks, we're going to be planning this meeting. It may be about 4 to 6 weeks out because I got a lot of other stuff going on right now. So it will be time so that the internal systems at Bristol Myers Squibb can get up and running, and they can go through a couple of patients, get the bugs out of a system. It's a new system for them too. So everybody needs to be a little patient here. So we'll let them get the bugs out. We'll let some of our centers of excellence prescribe a few patients out, see how the process goes, let them get the bugs out. And then we'll talk to you about the best way to evaluate whether you are a candidate and how you can get access to the drug and learn about additional trials that are coming up. There are trials outside of BMS's product. Other companies are coming up with drugs. Cytokinetics has a trial coming up as well for another myosin inhibitor. So there will be other options available for people to try. And there are some other agents that are coming up. So we're not done with discovery. This is not the end of discovery. It is a finish line and it's a starting line. This is the end of the beginning, or is the beginning of something new? I'm not quite sure, but it's a new day and it's an exciting day. I'm going to go through these questions one more time, see if there's anything else I can answer really. Is this going to be an add-on therapy or is this going to be a standalone? Are we getting rid of beta blockers or are they still around?
So, well, at this point of time, the way it has been tested in trials. So specifically the Explorer trial, this was added on top of beta blocker or added on top of single therapy. In the Valor trial, it was added on top of everything in the kitchen sink that you were on. So is there data which suggests that it should be a first-line therapy? No, not yet. Are there substantial number of patients who have side effects from beta blockers or disopyramide? Yes. So if you have side effects and you are not able to tolerate, look, I say this all the time as part of my presentations. Drug side effects cannot be worse than the symptoms of your disease. Exactly. If you do not have to suck it up just because, So if you are in that situation, then individual judgment-based conversations need to be had with your HCM doctor. But fact, at this point of time, the true data was not based on isolated initial therapy with Camzyos.
Well done from that. I saw the Mavacamten just about to pop out of your mouth when you changed that. It's going to take us all a long time. It was first the investigational med, and then it had its MK number, and then it was Mava, and then now we have to learn a whole new language. So I'm going to slip back and forth. So get used to it, people. Okay. So I'm just trying to think if there's anything else we really need to go over today. I will say I had ideas early on when this molecule became obvious, and I wondered why somebody would spend so much time on hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. But then even in the investor call today, there's a future trial planned for heart failure with preserved ejection fraction using Camzyos. And I think that's actually a really good thing for the HCM community, because it doesn't stop with us. There's other utility of this agent potentially that will be investigated. And if it proves out, I think we'll see availability and cost maybe alter there too. So this is the starting line. We have so much to learn. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of urgency to get information. And I'm going to suggest everybody just take a moment, take a deep breath. We just finished a marathon and we're evaluating our performance and we're getting ready for the next one. This is going to be a long haul. It's not a sprint. So be cautious, be careful, don't get frustrated, don't be intimidated by the process. HCMA is going to be here to help you through the process of all of this. We're partnering with BMS's Patient Assistance Program to make it accessible if you want to try. So it's an exciting day, not gonna lie, it's exciting. And much like Milind, you had your moments thinking of your lost friend. And I'm gonna do this without emotion here. I'm gonna try. Probably gonna fail. I've lost multiple family members and probably more friends that I've met along the way that I've lost to HCM. I know more people with HCM than probably anybody else in the world. And thereby I've lost more friends than probably anybody else from HCM. To know that there's a new option available that may improve lives and extend life potentially, it's a good day. I can't help but think of my sister, my dad, my uncle, my aunt and grandfather that I never knew. And then I think forward to my kids, niece, nephew, daughter, great nephew, all potentially or affected, and think tomorrow's going to be a little bit better for them than it was for us. And we'll make the next tomorrow a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. I'm back to wearing my bracelet that I hadn't worn in a while. And it's a quote from Mary Oliver. And it says, "Tell me what it is you plan to do with your one wild and precious life." Mine is committed to bringing better care to patients with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy worldwide. And today we can take a win. So with that, I'm going to sign off for now and let Milind get back to his conference. And I am going to be getting on an airplane and going home from Memphis, Tennessee. And I will have 2.5 hours of peace and quiet on an airplane to process everything that has happened in the past 14 hours. To the entire staff of MyoKardia, principal investigators, scientists, VC, patients, marketing people, communications experts, everybody, the acquisition team at BMS, from the lady who took my badge at BMS the other day when I went to meet with them, to Giovanni himself. Thank you all for bringing this day to us. However, yours truly will keep your feet firmly planted on the ground and remind you every single moment that patients are at stake and we matter. So remember us every single day. And for that, we will thank you. Milind?
Can I? Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. Very well said. And, yes, this is a good day for science. And this is what should drive all of us in the field of healthcare. And it certainly drives me to do it good for our patients. Ultimately, it is patients that matter. Patients first. That's it. Patients first. Nothing else should be important at this context. science will continue to evolve, and that is a good thing. I am gonna end also by thanking, this is a team sport, my patients. I have to thank my colleagues. I have to thank the partnerships that we have fostered with organizations like HCMA, the industry partnership, and my office staff, the folks that help keep me grounded and keep me moving in the right direction. And most importantly, I think, I also have to thank my family members for A, putting up with me, and B, supporting me all along. So, well,
I think
as
that's,
you said, thank you very much. This is a good day. We should be happy and smell the roses once in a while.
I raised a glass last night, I'll admit, and celebrated. And yes, two last people or group of people I want to thank. My family, because I've been traveling literally all over the country trying to make things happen behind the scenes, helping recruit for the early trials, working late hours, maybe not 100% focused on home when other things were going on as we were trying to build this world that we want to live in. And again, the clinical trial participants. Without them, their bravery, their courage, and their time commitment, this never would have happened. So props to all of you. We love you. We thank you. Milind, thank you for joining us. Facebook viewers, thank you for joining us. Tales from the Heart viewers, you can get the links through the description in the podcast. Thank you to our sponsors of Tales from the Heart for supporting us to be able to have these conversations, and stay tuned for more information. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks.